Well, a good walking tour in Manchester will depend on the subject, really, a good subject to begin with. As long as it's not raining, that's okay. Everybody knows this is Manchester and you dress appropriately. And if that involves an umbrella, which it doesn't very often, I have had one tour with the rain all summer long, so I'm sure that will continue. So reasonable weather, being able to see where something happened, being able to pick up that this is where Emmeline Pankhurst stood when she gave a speech. This is where Christabel was actually arrested for the very first time, and this is the cells just across the road at the town hall where she was put into that cell for the first time. The first arrests of the suffragette movement happened here, and we see these things on the television, we read about them, but to actually think, gosh, yeah, it was here where I pass every time I come into town, something like that, then it really does make a difference. Most of the time when we're going around doing things, you're busy, you're going about your daily work, you're talking to the person next to you, you're thinking about, am I going to miss my bus? You're thinking about, should I have bought that blouse? Should I have, picked up that book from Waterstones on the way? And you're not particularly paying attention because we're so familiar, I think, with the streets of Manchester, that you don't stop to think, this happened here. Peterloo, somebody stood on the hustings at this spot. It's still here. Is it still here in the stones? Is it still here in the air? So being able to be actually in the place, I think, is inspiring. A good walking tour won't be too long. I think about an hour and a half is probably enough. I think that's enough for anybody to pick up on a story, develop it, make a coherent explanation of what they want to say, without people getting tired, because no matter really, I think, how good a story you've got to tell, you can only take in so much, and an hour and a half is long enough. Then you need a cup of coffee or something like that, don't you? That's plenty of time. So yeah, I think that's it, and a good audience, people who are interested in the subject. It's one of the great things about being a guide in Manchester and doing the tours. The people who come on them are interested in the subject. Sometimes they tell you little snippets that you didn't know before, which is great. So engagement with your audience. Well, I'm doing a few for the festival this year. I'm doing a general one on Literary Manchester, which looks at some of the writers in the area, from the area, who wrote about the area as well, who wrote about Manchester. People like Anthony Burgess, most famous for A Clockwork Orange, people like Elizabeth Gaskell, and various others. So again, I can take you to the places that they wrote about and read a section about, say, the Midland Hotel, written by Val McDermott back in the 1980s, or something about what was G-Mex, written by Howard Jacobson. So yes, I can read you a little bit about that place, written by a Manc, or somebody, one of the people that have come in and made Manchester their home, at the place that it actually happened. So there's Literary Manchester, and we tend to think that Manchester doesn't have a huge number of writers, but we do, all sorts of different writers. And what else am I doing? I'm doing a literary women's tour, so a tour particularly about the writing of and about women in Manchester. Mrs. Pankhurst, of course, is the big name. She did write an autobiography which tells some really interesting stories about her childhood and about the fight for women's suffrage, but also again Elizabeth Gaskell, Val McDermid, other women writers, sort of ancient and modern really. What else am I doing? I'm doing a general tour about women, so not specifically literary, but about the fight for the vote and the strong women of Manchester. Manchester is a city of strong women. You know, it's surprising when we get visitors from outside Manchester who say, "Oh yes, Mrs. Pankhurst, I knew she was to do with women's the votes for women. I didn't know she came from Manchester." To which I proudly say, Moss Side, good Moss Side girl, Mrs. Pankhurst. But lots of others as well. Manchester is a city of strong women, from people like Anne Lee, who started the Shakers. Who else have we got? More modern people like Nancy Rothwell, Dame Nancy Rothwell, the first female Vice-Chancellor of the University of Manchester. Carol Ann Duffy, the first female, could you believe it, after all these years, the first female Poet Laureate. Yes, I know she's Scottish, but she lives and works in Manchester. So lots of strong women, some literary, some political, and a whole mixture. And I'm also doing a new tour called CSI Manchester, which is about the thriller writers of the area. I've been reading so many thrillers. It's actually not good for you to read so many thrillers altogether. I'm getting very spooked about going into quiet areas, which never bothered me before. But lots of books set in Manchester of death and destruction. We've got murders at St John's Gardens. We've got murders at Pomona Docks. We've got detectives who are detecting out of the centre of Manchester, some of them who are based in some of the old headquarters. Reading some of the old books has been really interesting. Most of them, I want to say old books, in the last perhaps 30 years or so, to see how the headquarters have moved around Manchester. Some of them go back to Longside Police Station, some of them go to Chester House, some of them go to, I can't remember all the others, but of course the newer ones are going out to the new police headquarters, which is along the Metro link, which is very convenient for all the policemen. Yeah, that's the latest one. So a lot of new thrillers, and of course thrillers are the most read books. The trouble with the festival is that everything comes at once. I'm usually doing the tours, so it's hard to fit it all in. I have booked for the Ted Hughes event. I would like to, I hope, go to the one on Melmoth, the new Melmoth book by Sarah Paris that I was reading about in the paper only yesterday. So those definitely, and some of my other guiding friends are doing some tours as well. I know that my friend Suzanne usually does one on raucous women, and that will definitely be a good one. Hi, my name's Anne Beswick. I'm a local tour guide. I have an interest in things literary. I love to read, and I love to tell people about the books and the stories around Manchester.